Welcome to the CX Pod, where we aim to expand people's perception of customer experience management. We know that customer experience goes hand in hand with employee experience, and we believe that a broader and more holistic view might even replace terms like CX and EX with people experience or human experience.
Dancing. Welcome to the CX Pod today. Hello, Joanna. You were just dancing. Why don't you keep...
I was just having a little morning jiggle.
Yeah, where's that? Why are you so happy? Did you go to the gym?
No, I didn't, but I think you did.
No, actually, I didn't. Not this time. I have plans to go later, but yeah, no. Today I was busy with kids.
Yeah.
What about you, Eirik? Hello, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
Did you go to the gym today?
No, but I ran to work actually.
Oh, you did?
Wow.
I did not dance, but I ran to work, so I have done my training this morning.
What a lovely start to the day.
It is.
I kind of knew you were that sporty kind. I had that feeling. Like, we don't know each other that well, but you've been at the pod before, and we've talked because we did collaborate back in the day on some projects. But you're back at the CX pod for the second time, and today we have challenged you to speak English even. How is that for you? Is it okay?
That's okay. I work in an international company, so I tend to do that quite a lot.
Yeah. So, Joanna, just before the recording started, you actually had to ask Eirik for some words in English, which is really, really interesting.
As usual, Joanna is the one that struggles with the English, the one that actually is originally English. But
isn't that like the shoemaker's children, though? Kind of. Like, if you make shoes, then your children are wearing bad or like worn shoes.
Yeah.
And if you work with customer experience, your own customers or guests, there are some similarities. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess there is. Yeah, I think I've just used so many years getting to grips with the Norwegian language that I spent some years neglecting my English, which means that I just get confused.
Yeah.
But
so
no
the word
problems today.
But the word we were looking for was political science, and we're gonna let you introduce yourself in a minute, Eirik. But let me try and do it a little bit first, because, like I said, we worked together on different brand projects back in the day. But now you work for Ipsos, so you can talk more about that. But one of the many reasons that we wanted you to come back to the CX pod is because before the American election or the US election, you went out and you got quite some media. Sort of attention here in Norway, at least, around a statement saying that over 50% of young men would vote for Trump in the upcoming election back then. And then you got some heat from that. And I think, we're not going to go into any political discussions, like not too deep anyway, but it's really, really interesting for us working with customer experience and hence working with customer insights, the whole sort of mechanisms of insights, how they work, how you guys present them, and then also how the media pick them up and use them. So can you just say a little bit about how was that for you, and give us the short story and also an introduction of who you are and what you do at Ipsos, please.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Yeah. Let's start with the introduction then. So I am currently managing director of Ipsos in Norway. I have always worked kind of in the brand strategy insights space. So insights consultancy, that space. I am a political science scientist. My background is in political science, so I have a master's degree in political science. And so one of the maybe most interesting things about moving to Ipsos is the opportunity to work very closely with our public affairs team. And so the team that does all our political polling and all of the work we do for public entities, all of the kind of major societal studies that we do. Because, of course, I haven't worked as a political scientist in my career, but still I have a political scientist inside. And yes, as you say, we got some media attention, and there's a lot of learnings from that media attention as we got. Because, of course, we were on a debate program in Norway, a very well-known debate program.
It's a debate program in Norway, we have to say that, for the people outside of Norway.
Yeah.
And we talked about kind of the long trend lines of what happened in the Norwegian societies and what we see in our recent measurements and kind of the long trends. That's what we as analysts like to look at, of course, because that's kind of what can explain what happens today. But then, of course, what got the most attention was the fact that we said that it wasn't over 50, it was 47%, if I remember correctly, of young Norwegian males in a poll that we had done. They said that they would vote for Trump. And this was back in September, I think. And so a few weeks or a month before the actual election. And that got a lot of attention. Based on the fact that people didn't trust it. They didn't think it didn't fit their worldview, and got a lot of people coming up to me and saying that I have a son that is in that category. He don't vote for Trump, so this can't be true. So it's so a lot of learnings. I think one of the learnings is that media is really caught up in what happens in the moment. That's what gets the attention, not the long lines and the trends and the kind of structural things in society, which it's not really.
I just want to go back a few sentences there, because you said, people come up to you and say, my son is in this category. He wouldn't vote for Trump. So this can't be true, right? And I mean, it's just so obviously this is a subject that creates a lot of emotions, because it's, Trump is a controversial guy. So, but if you take that and put the same sort of mechanisms into customer insights and see this guy as the CEO of a company saying, I don't feel this way about our product, so this can't be true that the customers, right? How quickly we reject information when it doesn't fit our worldview. And how can we what can we do to make people understand what the statistics tell us and what they may not tell us? Because I remember you spent a lot of time defining that, this is one way of looking at the data. And if you look at it this way, this is the truth. 47% of young males will be voting, say they will. They won't necessarily do it, but they say they will or would if they would vote in the upcoming elections. How we interpret the data, and sometimes I'm asking a lot of questions in one now, so try to stay with me, because sometimes you can use the data to even defend or accuse, right? You can use the data and twist them to fit your. So where is the truth then? How can you tell us a little bit about the mechanisms there? Because it's such a good example, and then to apply it to the customer insights.
Yeah, no, but I think it's a very good question, or questions. And I think that's kind of what differentiates, to my mind, learning person or a learning organization, that you can look at that kind of data, even when it kind of doesn't fit your worldview and it's kind of outside of what you would expect, and see it as a learning opportunity. You see that's interesting. What can we learn from this? How do we interpret this? Rather than rejecting it, because there's always people can kind of always reject what they can't really understand. And of course, in this sense, it was a purely theoretical question. So Norwegian young males, they can't vote in the American election. We don't know how deep it went, right? They saying that they would vote for Trump, is that just a way of kind of showing their opposition to what is mainstream today? We don't know that, but we also know that we can back up the findings with a lot of the kind of longer trend lines that we see in Norway, but also in Europe and other Western markets, where we see that young people tend to vote more for populist parties. There's definitely a trend break where they have become more conservative in recent years. Just a kind of anecdotal evidence to back that up. My son, which is 18, he dresses the way I dress, right? He's much closer to what I want. Compared to if I go back and when I was 18, I would never, ever wear the same clothes as my father. That would be totally off. So all the generations has become kind of closer together. And in recent years, we do see that young males and females, it's not just males, they have tended to move to much more conservative kind of standpoints.
Yeah.
But the question is good. And the overall learning, I guess, is that people and organization, they differ. So some look at new data and they're curious. What can we learn? What does this mean? Some people, when it fits their worldview, they say, great, yes, we already knew that. And when it doesn't, they reject it.
Yeah, I love the example. Sorry, Merete. I was just thinking, it also reminds me very much, Merete, you will remember this as well, when we was at the B2B conference in 2024, when John Sills did the exercise with us to draw our own map of the world. And it's just so interesting, that very short exercises that everybody generally starts drawing from where they themselves are sitting, and they forget huge continents of the world when they're asked to draw a map of the world. And that is very much how we are often as people, that we believe what we can see and we believe what we can understand. And I think it's so important that you lift this fact that we need to remain curious. It's the curiosity that will help organizations evolve and innovate and be relevant for their customers.
And I also think, I'm just drawing an analogy to relate to people's relationships and relations, human relationships, right? Because and I'm talking about defensiveness now, which is I see this, but I don't believe it, so I'm gonna reject it, right? Now, this is something that happens when somebody tells you that something you did, for example, hurt their feelings. And they're going to go, but I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. I did it because, and they're going to start explaining and become defensive, instead of accepting that, oh, your feelings were hurt. I know that it was my intention, so I don't have to take responsibility necessarily for what made you hurt, but I could still recognize your feelings. And I think if we can learn to do this from a professional point of view as well in organizations, say, look, our customer tells us this. We don't like that, and that was not our intention, but we need to recognize that this is what happened when we did it. And then we can choose whether we want to do something about it or not. That's not really the question. The question is, can we accept that this is the feedback? So, and I'm not saying that we would create better products or services one way or the other, but it's a nice little reflection, sort of rehearsal to try and look at it that way, at least in my opinion.
Absolutely. I would love to ask you a question, Eirik, because I know that you have such a solid background within brand strategy and analysis. From your standing point, what would you say is capturing your attention today in the world of customer experience?
Yeah, or even just like citizen experience, or just...
Yes, yeah. No, so first of all, I think, I don't know if this counts as a very kind of today topic, but in general, so of course I come to the CX space from the brand strategy space, so the brand strategy perspective. And to my mind, brand strategy, CX, are often treated as kind of separate, isolated fields, which I think it doesn't really make sense to me, because to my mind, in kind of the giant jigsaw puzzle you have to piece together to make a successful company and successful business, brand strategy and CX is kind of their adjacent jigsaw pieces. Because to my mind, of course, when you work, and as I've done in brand strategy, people talk way too much about advertising, and you don't build a strong brand through advertising. Advertising helps, of course it does, but a strong brand in people's minds are first and foremost built through product experience or customer experience or whatever interaction you as a consumer has with the product that a particular company is selling.
Yeah.
So to that mind, CX is a core part of brand strategy in my mind. And then again, from the other perspective, I really think that CX, sometimes I feel that CX is a bit, when treated as an isolated thing, sometimes a bit, it lacks a bit of strategic focus, because everyone is focusing on the same customer journey. Everyone is kind of coming up with the same type of solutions for how to make the journey more smooth, how to remove pain points. And then competing businesses come up with customer experiences that are very similar.
Yeah. Whereas
brand strategy is all about finding what's distinct with my brand. How can I bring something distinct and differentiated to the market? So that's also where I see kind of the power of joining CX and brand strategy together.
And it's also, I mean, Peter Aitken we talked a lot about this with him as well in a previous episode, where, he couldn't underline enough that, working to perform well on your customer experience is basically to put emphasis on what you did in the marketing sphere, right? So it's just a prolonging of it, and it's a necessity to be able to, and also if you have some way of being different in your brand strategy, then that also needs to be the red thread, as we say in Norwegian, through the customer experience as well. Like if you do say that we're simple to deal with, then that needs to put its sort of not pressure, but that also needs to show in the customer experience. And how much money you're throwing out the window if these two aren't consistent and seem like they're belonging to each other.
Yeah. Then you end up with the CX washing, as we were
Exactly.
talking about.
And I
saying
think
that your brand is something, communicating one thing, but not actually delivering it through the entirety of the customer journeys and the experience.
I just want to ask another question on that. It's sort of like a sub question to the what's capturing your attention, because I was just starting to reflect, like what's capturing my attention these days, right? And especially from a political sort of context with you being the guest today. I was just thinking like how the media is now. So right now we're in the end of February here in Norway, as probably everywhere in the world. But what I see is it's the tolls, right? The tolls that Trump is putting on everything. So how the media is talking about it is it's like a combination of trying to scare people to read the article, but at the same time they try to make sense of it. But no one is actually out there trying to say, guys, look, this is how we're going to, there's not a lot of positivity around it. So what do you think that comes from? Is there any insight analysis? Like how can we explain the way the media is handling everything that's happening? Like, have they forgotten the responsibility? Are they just still trying to get clicks? Are they not realizing that these are kind of serious things we're talking about? Like, because to me, everything, even the most political things, they're always about being clickbait. And I don't get it. Like, why aren't we dealing with these things in a more serious way? Like, what's your take on this, Eirik?
Yeah. No, a super interesting question. I just finished reading a book called, I think it was called The Power of Bad. So we know that this is a kind of a dynamic. We know that we as human beings, we are more attuned to negative signals that we get from our environment than positive signals. So they have kind of a rule of 4, saying that you need 4 good experiences for one bad, to balance one bad experience, right? So I think it's the dynamic of the media is, of course, that it's a lot more, you grab more attention with headlines saying that this is a scandal, or this is a crisis, or this is really, really bad. So that's kind of just, I don't know if we can escape that. That's the dynamic of media. That's how it works, commercial media. But it has an effect, and this is what I find most worrying in our data. So looking at the long trend lines, that people today in Norway and the rest of the Western world, so most markets, they are more pessimistic about the society.
Yeah,
they
I
are
read
more
that
pessimistic.
piece.
They're more pessimistic about the democracy even. That I find scary. And I don't think media will ever kind of, well, I hope, of course, that media would be more focused on the positive things that happens, but I don't think they will. That's the kind of dynamic. So we need to look elsewhere for that positivity. And that's, of course, also an opportunity for companies out there.
Yes.
To be a positive voice, because we have so many negative voices in society and the public discourse. So that's, to me, an opportunity.
Yeah, so to the listeners out there, with a little business in their tummy or wanting to create their own, grab this opportunity. Be the positive sort of outweight or to balance. And, I'm not saying that you should be fluffy or silly, but you could be serious about the positive stuff that's actually happening and the good things. I like to, we need the balance, and like you say, it's quite easy to get depressed. So I think the whole citizen experience of the world right now is, I think we're all on our tiptoes, right? We're all sort of anticipating what's going to happen now, and I think we need something to bring us hope, because otherwise people are just gonna sit down and accept whatever happens, and that's not how we deal with bad things, right?
No. And objectively speaking, if we look at the long trend lines again, we are we live much better lives than what if we were to transpose ourselves back 100 years ago. We live much better lives. And that's true for most of the population of the world. So objectively speaking, we're moving in the right direction. It's only that we are so fearful for the future and what's going to happen to the future that we become pessimistic, and we kind of our perception of the world as it is today is kind of misaligned, because we are massively lucky to be born in Norway, of course, but also I was born in 1981, and that's it's the best year, of course, but it's also, we're massively lucky. In 81, well, I wouldn't be where I am then.
We'll see about 2081 then.
Yeah.
So moving on, I mean, talking about how customer insights are usable, and how we use them to operationalize improvements. I think, we've talked about the effect of insights and how to use them, and maybe sometimes how not to use them. So instead of diving too deep into that, but we can have it as a little contextual sort of thing in the background, I'd rather want to know what you believe is the next sort of major evolution when it comes to customer experience. Like, what is it that we're going to see happening going forward with how we treat customers, clients, patients, citizens, members, humans?
Well, it's and I don't know if this is not a prediction. It's more based on what I hope to see.
Mm-hmm.
So what I hope to see is, and it's based on our previous discussion, of course, I hope to see that some companies take a standpoint and becomes kind of the driver of positivity in society. And you can definitely do that through customer experience, to my mind, and being kind of the positive force that leaves people with a good feeling in their stomach, rather than kind of being fearful as they are left when they consume too much media. And then I also hope that we will see a move in CX towards what I kind of the thing that I was alluding to earlier, that we want more distinct customer experiences. I think that's good for brand building, but I also think that's good for business, and I think it's also good for consumers, because people often, they like what is distinct, that they can go back to their friends and family and talk about.
Yeah. Positive word of mouth.
Yeah. And they like that, because it's kind of in our nature to want to talk about it. It's you don't, if you stay at a generic hotel, which you sometimes do, you never go back home and talk about it, right? It's not interesting. And it doesn't take too much to go from a kind of generic hotel experience to having something that is distinct. It's maybe some small, it's a chocolate on a pillow, or it's it's the small things. So yes, I hope kind of that we're moving towards more distinct customer experiences.
Yeah, I was just, again, just a comparison that popped up in my head, because I was just on a work trip, and there are several things from that. I was living in one of those hotels. Like, it was okay, nothing bad, nothing, it was just ordinary. So it was fine, But I was thinking, if we could try to create every experience to become as if it was a childhood memory, right? Then you'd nail it every single time. Like, if you could just, and it doesn't have to, childhood memories are simple. It's not necessarily the fancy trips to Disneyland. It's that fairy tale that your grandparent told you, or that fishing trip that cost nothing, but the sun was shining. And, that, I think if we can simplify things and create those,
Communication, good. Yeah, I find it really interesting, Eirik. You are definitely not the first one. When we ask this question, that you go to that, it's not necessarily what I think, but it's what I hope. And this seems to be repeating from our guests. We're talking about what we hope to see happening. So.
And I just have to add one more thing, and I want to give a shout out to the Norwegian Refugee Council, because this is something that also popped up at the airport when I was coming back home from my work trip. And they have a commercial saying, if you're tired of bad things happening, do something about it. And this is their way of asking for support, right? Because this is a nonprofit organization helping refugees all around the world. And it's so powerful, because it sort of speaks to, like, I'm so tired of hearing about all these horrible things. Well, then let's try to stop them then. Yeah. Right?
And that's perfect, because that follows up to what I was about to ask Eirik as the next question is, let's say companies hope to be distinctive, which is what, of course, most set out in doing. So have you got any tips or suggestions of how we could move towards aligning this brand strategy and customer experience so that we can make more distinct
I love that question.
brand experiences?
Yeah. Yeah, very good question. And I'm not sure that I have the answer, but at least some thoughts. First of all, I think in my experience, the people in an organization working with the brand is mostly in the marketing department. The people working with customer experience is in a different department, and that can be spread different places in an organization. So first of all, it's an organizational thing. Bring them together, not necessarily in the same department structure or everything, but at least create those opportunities for what's it called, cross-pollination of the CX field and
Cross-contamination.
Cross-contamination, even better, yes. Yeah. And then I think a good brand strategy document or good brand strategy platform, it has a CX element to it because it is supposed to define what type of experience that we want our customers to have. And that's, if you have the strategy and if you're very clear about that, it's easier to kind of design customer experiences that are more distinct to your brand. So, but it's not an easy thing to do. I think this is what we say with brand strategy, of course, and also CX. It needs to have the attention of top management, because either, if not, it will live in different silos in the organization. So I think a truly customer-oriented top management will kind of see that these two fields, they're adjacent, and they should be kind of, you should have a holistic perspective on how to develop the brand and customer experience.
So I'm just curious, because I'm not even sure how to ask this question. There's so many thoughts going through my head when you speak, because it's so interesting. And I think we're onto something that could be really powerful as a tool for any company. And it's just, so let me give you a little bit of a context where I come from here. We keep talking about how hard it is to change the culture to become customer-centric, right? Because, and as probably in many other professions, we have our certain opinion about what customer experience is and what customer centricity is. But now that looks like many different things. Customer centricity could look like, anything. So instead of starting with, we need to make the culture customer centricity, or even we need to be customer obsessed, like some companies go out and say, if you start with a brand strategy, and if you go even a step further back and start with, okay, what is our mission in the world? Like, what is it that we're trying to provide? But then you need to systematically approach the brand strategy. And in my experience, and you may correct me if I'm wrong now, Eirik, but a lot of companies don't really have a brand strategy. They just go with the flow, what's cool, or what the marketing, head of marketing or a commercial officer. Please tell the world why it's a great idea to start with a brand strategy, but how to get started. Like, you shouldn't be dependent on a customer-centric CEO. If you have a great brand strategy and then you would at some point be customer-centric, because you know what it is that you want to deliver to the people you want to deliver it to.
Yeah.
Does it make any sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I just want to say that I think it helps tremendously to have a customer-oriented or customer-obsessed CEO.
Yeah, of course.
It's because I think it needs at some level to come from the top. And to my mind, it's so, of course, our team here at Ipsos, we conduct a lot of quantitative studies, but also qualitative studies. Qualitative studies is either focus groups or online communities or wherever. My kind of yardstick for measuring whether an organization is customer focused or not is whether or not the CEO or anyone from top management is part of those projects. If you have a group of people in a focus group talking about your market, your company, I think, why wouldn't top management be behind the mirror to look at that? Why wouldn't they be part of online communities to see what people are talking about their category and their brand? And actually, very few examples. I have very few examples of that, actually. So most of the time, it's kind of delegated to someone else.
Yeah.
So please research the market. Please find out what our customers are saying. So, I think it's a long answer to your question, but I think top management needs to have that focus. And then, as you say, I also think that
I'm just trying to ask, and sorry to interrupt, but like if you sell it into the C-suite group in your company as we need to get aligned behind a brand strategy and not necessarily call it customer centricity or customer experience, because when they hear customer experience, they feel that money is pouring out and where's the return of the investment, right? But when you talk about a brand strategy, that makes a lot more sense just because it's more common. It's more, I don't know. I'm just speculating here.
I think also in the brand space, we get that kind of, we also have to make convincing arguments that investment in the brand will actually create return on investment. So we know it's kind of from a theoretical level, of course, that the strong brand, it brings more buyers in. You can charge higher prices. So it's very kind of easy on a theoretical level to say that building a stronger brand will be good for business. But still, it's an argument that you have to make, and you have to convince the CFO as well.
Yeah,
not just the CEO.
CFO is a hard one. Often, we find it.
And
it is.
And I already know what short video we're going to make from this podcast episode, because I think we definitely need to get that.
Now you just created a teaser for the teaser. I like that.
Yeah, I did.
Awesome.
Yeah. We don't want to. We want to give you some space now to give yourself a humble brag, so to say.
Humble brag. Yeah.
Humble brag. So you've got so much experience. What would you say is your top achievement from? You can put a CX stamp or a brand experience stamp or. But what would you say is your top achievement that's made you feel the most proud during your career?
Was it the button at NRK?
No, of course I'm proud of that as well. That was a very fun thing, and it's a good experience. If I can answer the question in a slightly different way, I guess. I think what's so in my professional life, when I'm most proud in the moment is when, and this goes back to customer experience, I think that's when we deliver something that the client says this is super valuable. This will it helps us succeed in whatever we're trying to do. And most of the time when I get that kind of feeling is when we workshop with the client, or we have presentations with the client, or we sit down with the client and try to translate what we see in our research and in the data into something that is tangible for the client. And that delivery aspect is kind of, it's a bit, now I'm becoming very humble, because now I'm kind of criticizing our own business, but my business, looking at the insights, and we've focused too much on kind of the data generation and the analytical part of it, and not too much on the delivery side, because I think it's also our responsibility to deliver insights in a way that people understand, okay, this is what it means. This is what it means for us. This is what we should do. This is what we should do based on it. It's kind of like giving something a super complex product without the user manual, right?
Yeah.
And just expecting people to figure out what to do with it. So that delivery phase is where I tend to be most proud in the moment, at least, because when you work with people and you see that, okay, now they get it, now they try to understand it, now they kind of internalize the learning, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense.
And I think it's something so many people struggle with.
It's back to operationalizing it, right? It's easy to measure. It's not. I'm not going to say it's easy to measure or fetch the data and analyze it, but it's a bearable sort of challenge. But it's about how to use it and how to transform it into action. That's where we still, after 20 years with customer experience as a profession, we struggle with that. So I was expecting you to say you were the most proud when your son dresses like you, but hey, that was just my. Well, no, anyway, I'm excited.
That makes me a bit awkward, actually.
It's like a little mini me running around, 18 years old. But it's definitely interesting. And I think, when you say, I never thought about it, but what you said about, the generations being closer now, and how I feel like we interact. We interacted probably more, at least within the family, right? We interacted more across the ages, but now it's not just on family time. It's also, at work. It's the difference between the generations in many ways aren't really that big anymore, which I think that's a beautiful thing, actually. So maybe that's the positive we can take with us from today's episode, together with a few others. We're approaching the end, but thank you, Eirik, for joining us again and for taking on the challenge of speaking English with us. Thank you for that, Joanna, to you as well.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And yeah, this is another, from my humble point of view, yet another great episode of the CX Pod. You have been listening to Eirik Ekrann, the Managing Director of Ipsos in Norway. Joanna was here as always, and myself. My name is Merete, and this is the CX Pod. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to the CX Pod. If you want to reach us, you can always find us on LinkedIn, and please remember to follow us on Spotify and leave a review of what you think.